And the guy that you haven't heard from in a while, but you're old buddies with, and known him longer than me, is Dave Spadaro, who covered you when you were with the Eagles back in the day. Mm-hmm. Dave, you're with Schmelk and Fiegels here to talk some Eagles football. How are you, man?
Gentlemen, doing fine, thank you.
Good.
Good to talk to you. Just anything football related. Like America has never needed the NFL more than it needs it right now. I can't wait for this thing to start.
Well, Dave, first, let's break down some epidemiology with you. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
But in all seriousness, Dave joined us for our little mock draft we did earlier in the year, which is great. And now we're continuing. We have 3 teams left in our season preview of the 3 division teams, and the Eagles lead us off today. And Dave, I didn't mean to catch you on a day where there's breaking news for the first time in 2.5 months, but we did.
Yeah.
The Eagles bringing back, maybe one of their best offensive linemen of all time, and Jason Peters, but not to play tackle, to replace Brandon Brooks at guard, which I thought was just a brilliant move.
Interesting move, right? Like, so you expect that we believe the preseason, right, is going to get cut down to 2 games, 4 games, 2 games, 0 games. We don't know. There's no work obviously from the spring, limited reps. So how do you fill the gigantic hole created by the injury to Brandon Brooks? You bring in somebody who's been one of the all-time greats at left tackle, and you ask him to play right guard, rather than bringing somebody from the outside who would have to learn everything about the way Jeff Stoutland teaches the offensive line. It is such an interesting challenge for Jason Peters. At the age of 38, can he play not only for a 17th NFL season, but can he play on the right side and inside? Really crazy move, interesting timing, but I think that the Eagles feel like if somebody can do it, the most talented offensive lineman they've ever had is the guy who can make that transition in a very short period of time.
Dave, had he ever played guard, either a left or right guard at all?
No, and they do, well, they maybe a little left guard, taking some reps as you cross-train through the years at training camp, but never at right guard. And, never now. Look, he's been working with Lane Johnson in the offseason. They do that offensive line summit. Lane's really thrown himself into this. For years and years, people have asked Jason, and they've asked Jeff Stoutland, the offensive line coach, could you ever see a time when Jason, later in his career, moves inside to a guard position? And Stoutland told me once, he goes, look, like I would have the audacity to ask the question. He goes, look, Jason Peters is so great. He can play any position. So, but this is a tall order. But he's a big man inside. He's got quick, powerful hands. He's got a lot of anchor. He's a great athlete, and he also gives you the opportunity to have a player who can back up as the swing tackle. So the Eagles really were looking for 2 players here, and they feel like in Jason Peters they got themselves a bit of a 2-for-1. And now they've got the rookie from a year ago, the first-round draft pick, 2019, Andre Dillard, takes over at left tackle. And I will say this about the Eagles. It's a move that you go, wow, it raises some eyebrows. But the Eagles never leave themselves shorthanded along the offensive line. And since Stoutland has been here, even long before that, they believe in building along the line of scrimmage. So they get the benefit of the doubt on this one.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say the 2 things the Eagles certainly do more than any other team is have quality and depth on the offensive and defensive lines.
No question.
Let's stick there offensively, I think, for now, Dave, which is a good place to stick. Andre Dillard, he's a guy that played a little bit last year when you had some of those injuries at tackle. How do you think he played at the end of last year, and what are your and the organization's thoughts on the type of jump he can take in year number 2?
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Andre last year, when he played right tackle, he looked really bad. So they had to move him over there for an emergency one game. It was a tough outing for him. He played 3 games at left tackle against the likes of Khalil Mack. In that 3rd game, he played really well as the Eagles beat the Bears. He's gained 15 pounds in the offseason of muscle, we hear. Obviously, nobody's seen him on the field. So that's the biggest question with him. That and, is he going to be that physical, get down and dirty kind of left tackle? He's more of an athletic. Nobody questions his skill, his athletic ability, his feet, his mentality, his intelligence. Is he big and strong enough? And the Eagles feel like he really dedicated himself in the weight room in the offseason. And again, it's going to be just like every other team and every other position, a bit of a rush job to build chemistry. But they feel like he's been there. He's played next to Isaac Seumalo, and more than anybody on the roster, he'll be ready to go day one at left tackle. And that's obviously an important position. When your quarterback gets hurt, as much as Carson Wentz has gotten injured, you better have that left blind side tackle position buttoned up.
Hey, Dave, just real quickly to stay on the offensive line, in case Jason Peters, and being, the 38-year-old guy, I can relate to playing at that age, not at an offensive lineman position, but a lot of similarities as far as just 38's 38. I don't care what position you play, your body's still going to have a little bit of problems holding up. Talk to me a little bit, because we followed this guy in our draft, and you got the Eagles went out and got Jack Driscoll. Maybe he's the guy that would replace Jason Peters if something happens. How have you give me a little bit about Jack Driscoll and how the team sees him as his progression?
Jeff, it's a great question. And in a normal off season, you go.
I guess you haven't had one, so it's hard to answer that, right? Yeah.
You've seen Jack Driscoll take hundreds of reps, albeit against air and no pads, but at least he has the footwork down.
Sure.
That the Eagles teach. They haven't seen that. So the next in line is Matt Pryor. Matt Pryor came in for Brandon Brooks last year a couple of times when Brandon got hurt, including the regular season finale against the Giants when Brandon hurt his shoulder. Then Brooks hurts the Achilles tendon just a few weeks ago, so he's out for the season. So it would be Matt Pryor, next man in, third-year player. Eagles feel good about him. But Driscoll is one of those young players, and there's always another wave of offensive linemen that is developing. Again, it's just you don't know enough about these rookies in the NFL where you can say, yeah, he'll be ready to play in September, having taken exactly 0 snaps as we stand here in mid-July.
And by the way, I thought adding Prince Tega Winoho at the end of that draft was a great move. He's somebody that I thought could be a 4th or 5th round pick based on his raw skills. And I know not getting physicals hurt him with the injuries, but I thought that again, the Eagles always try to bring in developmental players. Jason Peters, once upon a time, was a developmental player too. Started at tight end, right, Dave? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And,
they know the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah.
He was a practice squad player as a tight end, and then he ran down the field faster than at 300 and whatever he was, 50 pounds, blew everybody away running down the field on a kickoff coverage or a punt coverage. I forget the story. And the offensive line coach up there was like, well, maybe we could take a look at him on the offensive line. And he's going to be a Pro Football Hall of Famer someday. So, you never really know. But if you have the athletic skills, coaches generally believe that they can coach up talent. And the Eagles do always bring in young offensive line talent, and they've developed them very well through the years.
Believe it or not, we've had a rather lengthy debate a couple weeks ago, Dave, on the Eagles wide receivers, because what we kind of go through a thing every day, we rank each team in the division based on their position groups and 1 through 4, and we're having a hearty debate as to comparing the Giants and the Eagles receiving corps. I don't want to necessarily do that with you, but I do think it's an interesting group because I love the young talent. Jalen Reagor I think is a really good player. I liked J.J. Arcega-Whiteside last year. John Hightower was a guy. Marquise Goodwin has a lot of talent, hasn't necessarily recognized it. And then you have your 2 veterans, Alshon Jeffrey and Deshaun Jackson, where the big question is health. So, I could see this receiving core be really good, but I almost think it's almost like a very high risk, high reward type of group.
Yeah, I probably would agree with that. I mean, you're investing a lot in veterans who are coming off injuries, so that's 2 things. I would think both would be very motivated. Deshaun came back last year, had the great first game against the Redskins. Well, they were the Redskins, the team formerly known as the Washington Redskins. And
Dave, don't feel bad. I'm going to be doing that in December, so don't worry about it.
Yeah, and I know. And then of course Deshaun last week has a social media gaffe, and a significant one that he's recovering from. So he has a lot to prove. And look, Deshaun really can't afford any more missteps here. It's time to be healthy, play, keep your head squared on straight, and go out there and do what you do best, and that's run faster than everybody else in the field and make big plays. And then Alshon's the same way. People in Philadelphia, Eagles fans around the world, they were kind of like writing off Alshon last year. All of a sudden he's back, and you need him. At the top of the season, you can't count on Jalen Reagor, and you can't count on Marquise Goodwin, and who, by the way, has a hefty contract bonus should he make the roster. They also drafted 3 other wide receivers. So it's a bit of a mystery. You hope J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, a second-round draft pick, can bounce back after a disappointing rookie season, but he's still not going to be that speed player. The Eagles need explosiveness. They need Jackson to stay healthy. They need to get Rager ready to go. And, they need another young player, Quez Watkins or Hightower or Greg Ward to take another step. Look, I think the Eagles learned a lot last year going down the stretch in December with Greg Ward and with Ortega-Whiteside and, with players Deontay Burnett and players who came up from the practice squad, and you had to reconfigure the entire offense, and they were still able to win a way less than stellar NFC East. To get to where this offense needs to go, they need to be more explosive. They need to make bigger plays and have faster players and players dangerous matchups at the wide receiver position. And that's only going to happen early in the season if Jeffrey and Jackson are healthy and ready to go.
And I think that's a big if. I think it really is.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that,
Jackson's
all
healthy. I think Deshaun's healthy. I'm not sure about Alshon, though.
I mean, they certainly have had enough time to rest, right? So,
yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the guy getting the football to those guys we just mentioned. And when you talk about Wentz, obviously this man can play some football when he's healthy, and I look at that as something that's going to have to continue to improve with him is his ability to stay on the field. Where I have a problem with is what's behind him. I have no idea why Nate Sudfeld is the backup quarterback for the Eagles, but I am encouraged about Jalen Hurts. Maybe talk a little bit about maybe the depth at this quarterback position and what the Eagles have seen in Jalen Hurts that really attracts them to make that type of draft pick.
Yeah, it's really an interesting threesome there. With Carson, obviously one of the most talented quarterbacks in the league. The numbers are always strong. He wins a lot of football games. Great leader, just hasn't been able to get through a full season since his rookie year. We were all excited last year to see him in the postseason, and he lasted 9 snaps and gets hurt against Seattle. So he's got to keep himself away from dangerous situations because when Carson's healthy, this offense is going to be fine. Mm-hmm. They're going to score a lot of points, and the Eagles are going to be the best team in the division, certainly on paper. We'll see what happens. The division is so crazy. You never know one year to the next. Nate Sudfeld, Jeff, he hasn't shown anything in regular. He hasn't played regular season. He's been strictly mop-up duty here and there. Mm-hmm. He's here on a 1-year deal. He knows the system. He can get you out of a game for sure, get you through a stretch, I think for sure, if you've got pieces around him, good offensive line, good running game, good wide receivers. All that has to work with Nate Sudfeld.
Don't forget about your tight ends, too.
Yeah, great group of tight ends with Ertz and Dallas Goedert. 1-2 punch as good as any in the league. Jalen Hurts, look, again, as a rookie, what do you expect from him? I mean, how can you expect anything from a rookie quarterback right now having taken 0 reps? This is not – and people have to understand this, and I know they do because they're smart Giants fans listening. You cannot replace reps on the field. There is no – unless the league pushes back into October, which I guess is possible. Anything's possible. This season's going to start September 10th. The Eagles are going to open against Washington September 13th, and you're going to have minimal time in preseason game situations. So how in the world can Jalen Hurts know the offense, develop chemistry, and the idea of building a package for Jalen Hurts and having him come in and be Taysom Hill, I'm just not buying that, at least early in his career.
Yeah, me either.
I just don't buy it. Yeah, they drafted Jalen Hurts because they don't want to keep investing $5, $6, $7, $8, $9 million in a backup quarterback short term. They want a young developmental quarterback who, quite frankly, never plays because they want Carson healthy 100% of the time. And maybe you flip that asset. You turn him into a really good asset and you flip him after 3 years. But they wanted some stability. They wanted to build a quarterback here and continue the pipeline of developing young quarterbacks. And that's what Jalen Hurts represents.
I'll let Jeff handle the running backs and the tight ends. He mentioned them previously. One more thing on Wentz from me, Dave. To me, I see a lot of Carson Wentz and Daniel Jones when I watch him play. I think they're similar, and I think both guys need to be, and the word I'll use is a little bit more prudent in their decision-making, whether it's doing a little too much running with the ball and they fumble, holding the ball in the pocket a little bit too long and they get stripped, trying to squeeze the ball in a little bit too tight of a spot that turns into an interception where the talent is there. It's just a matter of getting a better equilibrium on that risk-reward and on some of these decisions, whether run or pass, that can turn Wentz into, probably a top 10, top 12-ish quarterback into that top tier of superstar quarterback. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
John, think about it. Okay, Eagles early in the playoff game against Seattle. I think it was a 1st and 10. Okay, he has his first look is covered. So then Carson goes, all right, what am I going to do? How am I going to make something happen on this play? So then he rolls, starts to head up the field. And I was right there. I was on the sideline. There was nowhere to go. Throw the ball into the stands. Don't put your head down and put yourself in an exposed position.
Or just run out of bounds.
Jadeveon Clowney had a chance to take what every defensive player would take, a shot to the back of an exposed quarterback in a playoff game. You don't put yourself in those situations. Live for another play. And Carson had been really good about that all season. Just in that moment, the one player the Eagles could not afford to lose, they lost.
Well, real quickly, we'll stay on the offense. So John had mentioned the running back situation. I mean, obviously Miles Sanders is a guy that that can get the job done and has been able to do it. I think that the whole theme behind this conversation today is health. I mean, when you talk about Miles Sanders, that's something you have to be concerned about, because I think that the depth at that position, Boston Scott is a guy that, he had a career day against the Giants that last game of the season. My goodness, the guy scored a couple of touchdowns. What do you think about that position, and do you think that they have enough there to get them through the season if for some reason one of these two guys is hurt?
Yeah, Jeff, they've had so many injuries at running back. I don't think they ever will have enough at the running back position here, honestly. Miles is a tremendously talented player, takes the game seriously, will be a great lead back for the Philadelphia Eagles. I like Boston Scott as a change of pace. Let's see if Corey Clement can resurrect his career. They don't have the big banger like they had last year with Jordan Howard. So I could see them before too long adding that piece. I think that's an easy piece to add, relatively speaking, in the NFL. Good group, just not sure it's deep enough right now.
Are they actually going to give Miles Sanders 20 carries a game, Dave, or is he going to be like that 13, 14, and split it among everybody type of deal again?
Yeah, ideally I think it's 13, 14, and 3, 4, 5 receptions. But he's such a talented kid, and he's a big kid, strong kid. Did not have a lot of carries at Penn State, so there is a lot of tread on the tire.
All right, defense. The defensive line's awesome. It might be the best in the league. Just give me your overall take. Anything from the inside, you're so close to it that maybe us from the outside doesn't see when it comes to this group.
Yeah, one thing that they've done is they've added a lot of what they call positionless players in the secondary. Darius Slay, of course, was the big addition via the trade. They gave up way too many big plays last year, but they signed Nickel Roby-Coleman, who's one of the best nickel cornerbacks in the league. There's questions at safety with Malcolm Jenkins gone. Will Parks comes in from Denver. They're going to try Jalen Mills, move him from cornerback to safety, again with very few reps in the month of August coming up. So, but that defense will have to live with will be led by a great defensive line, particularly inside with Javon Hargrave and Fletcher Cox and Malik Jackson. Good on the edges. They need some depth there as well to step up. But should be a pretty good defense, especially if the interior of the D-line dominates like they think it will. And Slay as a top-line cornerback, something they haven't had in many, many seasons.
Yeah, Jeff, I want to follow up real quick.
Sure, go ahead.
I think you hit it, and I'm happy you actually went to the secondary, Dave, when I asked about the defensive line, because to me that's always been the question, right? They're going to win up front. They're going to get pressure, but can they cover well enough on the back end? They lost Malcolm Jenkins, but they improved at the cornerback spot. I know you haven't seen these guys, so maybe this is an impossible question for you to answer, but I'll ask it anyway. Do you think that this is as good of a secondary group as you've seen there within the last 3, 4, 5 years?
Impossible to answer, but I would say that from a talent standpoint, Darius Slay gives them a player to match up with anyone at wide receiver in a very explosive wide receiver group division.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And then what they were doing with Malcolm Jenkins the last several years, moving him closer to the line of scrimmage, quasi linebacker. They feel Jalen Mills can play that role. A lot of responsibility there for him. I think they have more pieces in the secondary, and I think Jim Schwartz likes to move those pieces around as much as possible. So I'm hopeful that they have the ability to match up with passing games and complement what should be a pretty good pass rush. The big question really on defense, honestly, is a group of maybe the most no-name linebackers.
I was
in
just
the
going
entire
there. I
National
was
Football
just
League.
going to say that.
I mean,
yep.
there's not one linebacker that you go that a casual fan looks at and goes, "Whoa, they are a pretty good linebacker over there." Not the case. So they need the D-line to occupy blockers. They need the linebackers to flow to the football and get clean looks at the ball carriers and make sure they tackle well. But I think they feel like they're faster on defense, they're more versatile on defense, and they're way better up front, and they're much, much better with Darius Slay at cornerback.
Dave, and I'll just, real quickly with the linebackers, I think collectively, there's not a bunch of stars there at all, but I think they can be a good unit. I mean, a unit that can compete, and just as long as scheme is put there. Two players I'm curious about, because when we were doing the draft and stuff, Kayvon Wallace, I think he can be a baller. I think this guy can be a really good football player. And then there's one thing I was researching a little bit on the team. Who is this Will Parks? The article I was reading today was very high on this guy, and possibly, really a good pickup for that secondary and the safety position.
Right, because they want their safeties to be able to move around in coverage. They want them to play at times in linebacker positions. They think Will Park can do that he brings some speed, and that he brings some versatility. It's all going to come down to how quickly he learns the defense.
Okay.
Played well in Denver. And Kayvon Wallace is in that same group. At Clemson, he moved around a lot. He blitzed. He was in the box. Can he cover in a deep safety position, or is he more of, we're seeing such a blend of what is an NFL linebacker, what is an NFL safety. They're so almost interchangeable at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Eagles are going to try to win with that kind of defensive philosophy, letting players have the responsibility of multiple positions. Parks and Wallace both fit in, but again, they are both new to the system, and so early on, how quickly can they assimilate after being in virtual off-season programs these last several months?
Yeah, Giants have similar chess pieces with Jabril Peppers and Xavier McKinney. Two guys that you can kind of put at that quasi-linebacker spot. Final question from me, Dave, and this is going to be really broad, so you can take it any way you want. How do you see this whole thing going? Just in terms of the teams not getting a lot of work, as you said, 0 or 2 at most preseason games is kind of what the word on the street is. Nothing official on that. In terms of the teams being ready, the teams being able to cut down their rosters, figuring out starters, how slow is this thing going to start with teams figuring things out early? Just how do you think this whole thing's going to go?
So I think that the Eagles in this division with 3 new coaches, I think the Eagles having Doug Peterson back, Jim Schwartz back, the coaching staff back, the quarterback back, have a bit of an advantage on the ground, as they hit the ground running, because they have a roster. They all know the system. They can go out and play a football game and be representative here pretty quickly. And so I think that gives them a bit of an advantage. But look, we're talking, and the NFLPA and the league haven't even agreed to all the protocols for training camp. These camps are supposed to open up. I think the Texans
in a week
are supposed to be in on Saturday or something.
in a week.
And
Good luck.
so I feel like, why is the league? I mean, I think you keep all options open, including pushing things back a little bit. I personally am one who goes, all right, why would you bring back football right now, and for the television viewer, compete with the NBA playoffs, the NHL playoffs, and Major League Baseball?
Good point.
If you started the regular season in October, by the way, the TV contracts expire in 2022, so this is a critical year. Why not start the season in October, play it a month later, and it gives you time to learn from any mistakes that the NBA and the NHL and MLB had, and make it a safer environment. And then maybe at the same time, you're giving rookies a chance to go through some OTAs, and you're giving players an opportunity to see how it works at the team facilities. I don't know. I think
it's a great point.
It's a very complicated, obviously, situation. Safety is first, and the NFL should not be in any rush to start the season. That's my opinion.
Sure. I like it.
Dave,
I really do.
Jeff, you good?
Yeah, we can discuss it later. That's great. I think it's a great point, and I think you got some great talking points there, Dave. And I feel like, just things are just so fluid at this point. Nobody knows. But it is good to talk about it. It's good to talk about football, and we know that on paper it's supposed to start soon, so that I guess we can get excited about that.
Yeah, and we all just want it, and we all want it to happen safely and try to get back to some kind of normalcy in this country. And the NFL plays such a huge part in all of that. No matter what team you're rooting for, we just want to see the NFL.
Yeah,
No
and
question.
Dave, to that point, I hope everybody in your world is healthy.
Yep.
Have you been back in the facility yet, by the way?
I went in for 45 minutes to clean out my office. We've gone through many of our protocols, Tier 2, Tier 3, what we're allowed to do. We're just waiting on word from the league on what is the next step and what is the official opening dates for rookies to report and for veterans to report. And then I will do what I am told, knowing that it will be a season unlike any I've ever experienced, and knowing this, that I will not get within 10 feet, literally, of any player or coach this entire season.